Welcome back to Upper Left USA Radio here. I'm Ken Newhouse in studio today, and joining us right now is historian and co-founder of a little organization in Missouri I like to call No Mo Sales Tax, Mr. Lloyd Sloan. Welcome back, Lloyd. How you doing today?
Oh, great, Ken. It's great to be back. Good talking to you again.
Good to talk to you too, Lloyd. Well, Lloyd, we got some big topics today. I know you were out of town this past week, and you're just catching up, getting back. Heard you enjoyed your trip up to Chicago. How'd that go for you?
Love Chicago. Yeah, I hadn't been up there in a while, and Chicago has one thing that we don't have in St. Louis, and that's that lake. And it makes a great air conditioner in the summer, and unfortunately not so good at freezing in the winter. But it's beautiful during the summer. The lakefront is just gorgeous, and Chicago, very nice trip.
Did you run into any Cubs fans while you're up there?
I did, and I'm respectful, and I would say they were as well, and they're very excited, of course, because they look like maybe this is their century, and maybe they're right. Well, we're going to find out.
Could be. They've won 8 in a row, and they're challenging the Pirates. They're only a game and a half back of the Pirates for that first wild card spot. So we got a pretty big battle on our hands here, and they're only 7.5 back of the Cardinals. This is going to be a pretty close race coming down the stretch here.
The Central Division of the National League is starting to look a lot like SEC football to me.
Exactly, a big cluster of you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but the Cardinals still on top, and I like our chances. So the Cubs are the Cubs. Let us not forget that.
That is true. 100 years of mediocrity, we like to say here in St. Louis.
Yeah, but at least their record is better than. I like the chances better than Hillary Clinton at this. Put it that way.
Okay, well, Lloyd, that leads us into our first topic tonight. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, or the DNC, couldn't answer a question when she was being interviewed by Chris Matthews of MSNBC earlier this week, Lloyd. She couldn't answer the question, what's the difference between a Democrat and a socialist? So, Lloyd, I'm going to play that real quick for you, and just give me your thoughts right after this.
Well, what is the difference between a Democrat and a socialist? I used to think there was a big difference. What do you think it is?
The difference between...
Is a Democrat like Hillary Clinton and a socialist like Bernie Sanders?
What's the difference between being a Democrat and being a Republican?
Well, what's the big difference between a Democrat and a socialist? You're the chairman of the Democratic Party. Tell me the difference between you and a socialist.
The relevant debate that we'll be having over the course of this campaign is what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican?
Well, you heard it there. She doesn't know the difference.
She doesn't want to say the difference, that's for sure. It may be, and we should help her out. We got to help her out so we can tell her the difference between a Democrat and a socialist. There are so many things there you can react to as well. And one, I thought I heard Chris Matthews' voice actually asking a hard question of a Democratic Party chair. That was amazing in and of itself. I think I must have died and gone to a bizarro world because I've got Fox News asking hard questions of Republicans. I got MSNBC asking hard questions of Democrats. So that alone is newsworthy. Correct?
I think Americans are fed up with both parties, Lloyd. You saw that on the Republican side during the debate in the last 10 days or so, and you're seeing it now on the Democratic side. Even talking about Hillary Clinton, she's now trailing ultra-liberal socialist challenger Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, in New Hampshire. She's now trailing 44-37. So what do you have to say about that?
I think it leads into you're exactly correct that the American people are fed up. They're tired of politics, the establishment in both parties. That includes Hillary Clinton and includes Jeb Bush. Bad news for both of them. And strangely enough, you ought to be able to tell the difference between a Democrat and a socialist. I'm sure Bernie Sanders could answer that question easier than Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The hard question is what's the difference between Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush sometimes. That's a little bit tougher for me to answer.
Exactly.
I would, I think the average Republican, let me start with that, they think this is a very funny interview because they're thinking to themselves, well, there is no difference between a Democrat and a socialist. That's what they're thinking, and that's why she can't answer it. I would say, in fairness, the correct answer, Debbie, in case you're listening, is there are some socialists who are Democrats. Bernie Sanders is an example, but certainly not all Democrats are socialists. If you really want to know the key to the Democratic Party, we are mostly fascists. Now, she probably didn't want to say the answer that way, but Hillary Clinton is not a socialist, people. She is a fascist, technically. Marx gave us the definition for socialism, at least closest to it, 150 years ago. Socialists don't like private property. They like government to own things. They like government-provided health care. Well, Obamacare is mandated health care by the government, but it's not owned by the government. And I realize that for most of us in the middle class, what difference does that make? If the government mandates it, that's the same as the government owning it as far as we're concerned. This is true unless you're Goldman Sachs. It makes a big difference if you're in that upper crust elite, whether or not the government owns those hospitals or whether or not you do. Mm-hmm. But one of the main differences between the Democrats and socialists is the government ownership issue. Sanders is more of a government ownership kind of guy. He wants the government to own the means of production. I presume that's what he means by a socialist. And that may be why Debbie's having trouble answering the question. There are socialists in the Democratic Party. There have been since the New Deal. But certainly not all Democrats are socialists. The Democrats have progressive elements in them. They have fascist elements in them. And it's a political party. It's like, Republicans have many factions as well. What's the difference between a Republican and a Christian conservative? I mean, some Republicans are Christian conservatives, but not all of them are, and that's the answer.
Well, Lloyd, switching topics here, I know we just had a Republican debate back on August 6th. We talked about it a little bit last week when you joined the show. Just getting a little bit of reaction. We got a lot of people who are rising in the polls. Strangely enough, Dr. Ben Carson is he's second in Iowa now at 14% in the latest poll. Donald Trump seemed to slip in a couple polls, but he stayed firm in a lot of other polls. He's still polling above 20% in a lot of these states, New Hampshire and Iowa, and then moving down to Florida. And even in Missouri, polled highest among public policy polling this last week at 23%. In Missouri, so that was their highest number that they've ever polled him at, and of course it's here in our home state of Missouri. And so I want to get to another candidate, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. We talked about his tax plan a little bit last week, talked about the bottom-up approach that you like, and tying that into a no-mo sales tax type of approach that you've taken here in Missouri. And I want to get your opinion on him and how his campaign seems to be struggling mightily, and not only in fundraising, but in just criticism by a lot of the media here. He attacked Donald Trump in the debate twice. He attacked him on health care, and he attacked him after Donald Trump rose his hand, saying that he might not support the eventual Republican nominee or even decline running third party if he does not win the nomination. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you think that Senator Rand Paul could fix his campaign over the next few months?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ken. I should do full disclosure here as well. I do lean towards Rand Paul. I'm favorable to Rand Paul on several issues, but I have to admit I was frustrated when he attacked Donald Trump. It's not that my politics are that close to Donald Trump. I'm not even sure what Donald Trump believes on some issues. He obviously is strong on immigration. I think what Donald Trump is really about is just the deep mistrust that many in the Republican Party have for their own leadership and that many Americans now have for government. And Donald Trump does an excellent job. One should not criticize him for the job that he does, tapping into that distrust, understanding it, and vocalizing it to many Americans. The immigration issue makes a good example. People are tired of being lied to about this by politicians who claim they're going to get a handle on this problem, and then, it continues to resurface again and again. They want a wall. They've been told they were going to get a wall. They don't get the wall. And Trump, I think, at least people believe, is serious. Regardless of how you feel about the issue itself, Rand needs to understand that a lot of his voters are also distrustful of government, and they don't take to it well when Donald Trump has the guts to raise his hand and say, you're right, if you run another big government Republican at me, you run yet another Jeb Bush or another Bush up there in the name of Jeb, that I will challenge such a candidate, and you will lose the election on that basis. I mean, we all know what's going on when he says that, and I don't think Rand should have criticized him for it. Rand's own father was reluctant to endorse Romney in 2012, and that's partly because his voters are not really that sympathetic to the established wing of the party. So I believe that was actually a mistake. Now, when he went after Christie, or Christie went after him and he defended himself, that was fine. I have no problems with that exchange at all. Rand defended himself as he should, and I happen to think he's right on the NSA spy. In fact, I don't trust politicians that want to spy on me. That's one of my own rules. If you want to spy on me, then I ain't voting for you, okay? So Chris Christie lost my vote as soon as he said that. Mm-hmm. But I do think Rand's policies are quite good, and it's frustrating to me sometimes that he doesn't rise more given the strength of those policies. But I understand Cruz is now rising, Fiorina is rising, Carson, as you mentioned. So there are a lot of other outsider types, and I include Rand in that, who are getting more attention. And I think you got to give some of that credit to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to have one problem and going forward, and his style is simply not the kind of thing American people want in a president.
No.
You don't want George Washington to be insulting people constantly, calling them short and fat and stupid.
Yeah.
That's not who Thomas Jefferson was. That's not who Abraham Lincoln was. It's not who FDR was. It's not who John F. Kennedy was, or Nixon. It's just not done. You have to have a certain level of adult maturity in a debate. So, no, Lincoln doesn't turn to Douglas in their debate and say, you're short, fat, and ugly, This is not how – that's how you debate Rosie O'Donnell. That is not how you discuss the fundamental issues that this country faces. And either Donald Trump grows up and proves he can handle the White House, or he's not going to rise much more in the polls. I don't think he'll get beyond 35% personally.
Wrapping it up here on Upper Left USA Radio with Mr. Lloyd Sloan, historian and co-founder of Nomo Sales Tax. Lloyd, final question for you here, sir. What do you think Donald Trump needs to do over the remainder of this campaign period before the Iowa caucus? He has lacked a lot of substance in his speeches, and I personally think that will hurt him in the long run. So what can he do to fix that?
Eventually somebody's going to ask you specifics, If you say, well, I don't like slavery, well, how many slaves do you want to free? You better say all of them, or you better say at least half of them, but you better have some specifics out there. And if you say taxes are too high, then somebody's going to say how much too high, whose taxes do you want to cut? And if you have no answer, you have no substance, and no one should believe you. Frankly, that will hurt him because he will be seen as just another politician if he's not careful. This is what politicians do. That's what W. Wasserman Schultz did. They avoid answering questions. People don't trust that. Trump needs to get some specifics, absolutely. I believe that we need to get rid of the income tax from the bottom up. I do advocate bottom-up tax cuts. I'm fine with Rand Paul's flat rate. That I don't have a problem with that. Not looking to gouge rich people. But we got to get the average person and the bottom half of this society need to not be paying taxes, period. That's one way you could state the goal very specifically. It makes no sense to me to tax that bottom half just so you can hand them their own money back. That's the kind of thing that fascists do. That's the kind of thing that people do who want to use government to control people. So I don't know if Donald Trump agrees with any of that, but that would be a nice place to start. How about we get rid of the taxes on the bottom half of society, period.
Well, Mr. Sloan, thank you so much again for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Thank you much, Kenny. Always a pleasure.
Talk to you later.